These questions, they generally don't change too much. From my 18 years of interview experience, they haven't changed. Interview is literally the whole goal that you're working towards, right? So everything that you do, every study that you do, every network that you do, all the side projects that you build, all that stuff leads into this part, which is your interview. So let's start from the goal and then let's work backwards of like what you need to do from there. So that's why I've structured the course to be like interview strategies, and then we go dive deep into each part of these interviews. And then we talk about branding, talk about networking, talk about building something, and then we can go backwards on the theory, like how do you do a product roadmap? How do you do all that stuff? And we'll work backwards until you get it. So let's start with the end, which is the interview part first. So you can see what actually happens in the interview process. So generally at product management roles, there are 4 stages of interviews. You could have 5, you could have 6, you could have 3, but generally it's around 4. And they come in different flavors. The first thing is screening. So very obvious, this is standard for every role. So like a hiring manager or HR person will call you, screen you. Make sure you have the right background fit. Assuming you've passed the application tracking system and you get a referral and all that stuff, they call you, whether you're quite fit or not. After that, then a recruiter would pass your detail to the hiring manager and be like, great, I met Dave. He's pretty good. You should go set up an interview with him. And the first thing that they do, actually they don't come in this order. Actually, they could some do something else. But one of the things that they assess you for is your product craft, which is also known as product sense, product intuition. I'll go deeper of what that means in a second. But these are the things like, hey, tell me about your favorite product, Dave. What do you like about it? I'm like, oh, my favorite product is Spotify. Oh, cool. If you're a product manager of Spotify, how would you improve that product? That's where they get you with the product sense question, because you can't just be like, oh yeah, it'll be great if we can do like AI generated content that can stream music 24/7. If you jump straight into that, then you've already lost the interview. You got to do the strong on then. Oh, what's the market size? What is the stage of the product that it's in? Who are we targeting? What's the strategy? Like all that stuff. That's what they're really assessing you to see if you got the product sense and intuition. The second thing that we assess you on is product strategy, which is actually thinking beyond just the product itself, but how would you measure the success of this product? How would you take this product to market from a go-to-market strategy? How would you execute on this product? For example, like, would you do A/B testing? Would you do a mass big blast rollout? Why? Why do you want to do that? And or asking you questions like, well, if you're going to measure the success of this product, how will you do it? So yeah, and you got to clarify, like, oh, when you say success, are we talking about 12 months, 24 months, 36 months? So these are the things that song and dance that you got to do in the interview, and they will assess you on that. And the last part is leadership and culture. Because product management is such a cross-functional, influential role, it's not a direct, does not have like a lot of direct reports. In fact, for most product managers, don't have direct reports. Some companies do, it's kind of weird, but most companies don't. But you got to do cross-functional influence. So that means your culture, your value must align with the business's culture and value. And these are like a behavioral questions. Like, tell me about a time when you made a difficult decision. How do you approach it? Tell me about your weaknesses that you have and how are you improving on those weaknesses right now? So these are the things that they will ask you. And these 4 types of question could come, it's not sequential, but screening is definitely the first one, but 2, 3, and 4, they could come in at any point into that process. And depending on what type of company you're in, what type of industry you're in, like this could change. And sometimes we might even throw in things like design thinking and consulting questions. Like Google, they're famous for asking you like, oh, how many windows are there in New York City? Can you estimate that? And that throws me off every time because it's like the hardest thing to think about. Then you got to find a gauge, find a benchmark. Well, when say windows, how many windows? They're talking building windows or house windows or car windows, like do the song and dance. But sometimes we do that, but it's not common. And all of this can be delivered across multiple formats. So a format could be like a workshop format where they bring you in and you do a workshop with them. Like, you know, when I interview for I know he's a recorder, so I won't say it, but when I interviewed for one of the big tech companies, I was doing workshop style. And that's what they do. They put you into a workshop and you do a workshop with the person. Sometimes they do a take-home task. So where I used to hire at Linktree, we send people take-home tasks. You can take it home and just do it. Sometimes it'd be just a conversation. Like for startups, most of the time it's going to be just a conversation. Like, hey, like tell me about how do you do a product? You have a conversation. Or it could be a mixed thing where they put you into a loop and you might do a workshop things one day and you might do a conversation. You might even walk away with a take-home task. But all of these format change, like depending on the company. These questions, they generally don't change too much. from my 18 years of interview experience, they haven't changed. It's really just the format that's changing. The term might change. Like right now it's called product craft. Back in the days it was called product intuition, product skills. Like this could change, product strategy, and like these words could change, but it's really the meat of it and what they're assessing does not. Now I'm actually going to dive deeper into screening questions. So screening questions, how you prepare for this. This is probably the easiest thing to prepare for. Like I'm not going to go too deep into it. It's literally just look through the job description, highlight the keywords that they're looking for during the screening process, and just pick out examples of what you've done in the past and just answer them and just tie it back into the job description. So, these are basically most of the times it's done by recruiters. They don't really know in depth about the product craft, product sense, product strategy. They're not going to ask you that type of stuff. They might if they're an experienced product recruiter, but most of the time they're not. Most of the time what they're really looking for is like, tell me about yourself. What projects have you done? And you want to tie up your examples to the job description. So just highlight the keywords, bring examples from there. Neha, you got a question?
Yeah, David. Like the side project which I'm doing right now. So currently I work for Deloitte, right? And within Deloitte, I'm playing the role of test manager and leading the test tech team, right? But my side project is completely into the product side of things. So how do I highlight that in my resume? Because I cannot tie it up with my work experience of the current organization which I'm working on. So still consider that as like a relevant experience when you put that you're doing so and so side project in the resume.
Yeah, I think, absolutely. Because you don't have much to talk about from a job perspective, then I will put the side project into your resume. And I wouldn't call it a side project. I'll call yourself like a founder or like CEO or something like that, right? Or a product person, something like that, because you can you are that person, just not doing it at that scale. And that would demonstrate the skills that lacked. And ultimately what you want to do with the resume, it's all just for a phone call. That is the point of the resume, nothing else. Once you get a phone call back, your resume has done its job. So, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Cool. Awesome. Once you pass the screening questions, then you want to, screening question, use STAR methods, right? So I want STAR method, most common method to do. The second thing you want to do is once you have done your screening, the next thing you want to do is you want to start preparing for interview that assesses your product skills. And this is the hardest thing to do because this is really testing out whether if you got the goods or not. So within this type of interview, you have two types of interviews, as I mentioned before. You have your product sense, product intuition, product skills, product craft, whatever you want to call it, is basically there to tease out whether if you have the skills to build good products. And these questions come from like, hey, build me a X product for Y. Build me a gardening product for Facebook. Build me a Uber for dog walking, right? So build me an X product for Y. Another one would be something that starts off as, hey, what's your favorite product? That might come off as like, very like harmless question, but they're actually really teasing out for your product craft. So if you say, hey, my favorite product is this toaster that I bought. It's amazing. It makes amazing toast. You're not going to leave yourself much thing to follow up on the next part, which is how would you improve it, right? So you want to think about this, like, what's your favorite product? Well, you know what? I'm interviewing for like a software company. So I'm going to use a software example. I'm going to say my favorite app is like, this meditation app that I use to meditate. So, and then you're going to ask you questions like, how would you improve that? What do you like about this product? How would you measure the success of this product? And so on. So these are like product sense, product intuition questions. And then another one would be like, these are the type of questions. Another one would be like the product analytics, product strategy questions that will come through. And this is a second loop or second type of interview that you go through. Usually the product sense one will take like half an hour to like 45 minutes already. And you come back for another round. And then you do another round called product analytics, which is or product strategy. Would be like, hey, I've got a product that we just launched in market, like a Xbox for Microsoft. We're launching a new Xbox. How would you measure the success of this new Xbox? Then you talk about, great, awesome, like, where is it right now in its product life cycle? When you say launch, are we doing a soft launch, hard launch, big bang launch? Who are my customers for this product? Like, is it developers? Is it game developers? Is it consumers? Is it Microsoft themselves, and so on? And you want to talk about how you measure the success for these people. So, product analytics, and then a really good, amazing resource I can share with you. It's this great guy. His name is Lewis Lim. He's very well known in the industry. Everyone knows him. He's like just a really good guy that's wrote a really awesome book that teaches a method of how to interviews. And he's got this question bank of every single question since 2019. of all the big tech companies. So if you scroll to the latest one, you can pick out the questions, and these are all like contributed by his community. So, a common question that got asked by Meta, maybe say, hey, how would you measure the success for DoorDash, right? Define the goals and success for Meta payments. Design and sharing app for senior citizens, right? So these are the questions that gets asked at Meta. And me as a hiring manager, most of the time I can't come up with questions myself. I go to these groups and I just find the questions that these groups and these blogs do, and I'll just ask it in my interviews. I'll change it up, of course, but it would come in that form. Because what they're really asking is not the answer to this question. It's actually your approach, your mindset, your process. What did you do to come up with that question? Do you ask the right question, answers? Do you answer the right things? And what are those right things? So when you are going for product sense and product signals, these are what hiring managers are looking for. They're looking for, do you understand the product motivation and the context? Like, do you have a solid understanding of the product landscape that I'm talking about for both internal and external factors, which is like your macro factors from a market perspective or internal factors from a business perspective? And do you define the product's purpose and the motivation for this product? So a good example would be like, let's do a gardening app for Facebook. Well, what is Facebook? Well, it's a social networking site, right? So the purpose of that is connecting people together. So a gardening app is probably to do with some sort of like free, find your gardener, connect people together, that type of product, right? So if you interview at Meta, you do that. But if you interview, say, some other company that is not a social media, I can't think of any right now, but let's assume I'm interviewing for like Amazon, where you probably sell e-commerce services. Then what you're actually selling is going to be different. So you might do like gardening supply, gardening products, right? So product motivation and context. Second part is determining the target audience. Do you think from a customer's perspective and hone in and identify and prioritize that customer segment? So this is about using relevant criteria to define the target audience and provide rationales for why that audience has been picked, and provide pertinent criteria to define the user segmentation. So define the audience and then prioritize it and tell them why they want to focus on this segment. And a good example, like, the gardening thing, maybe you should target, maybe your customer is actually homeowners that is probably got investment properties, because if they have their own property, they probably just clean it themselves. They might have investment properties. They might want to target, say, investment property investors. And then problem, like what's the problem that's been set? Identified problems that's been identified for this person or this target audience. How do you solve that problem? And this is the last part, solution development. Do you have a creative but yet feasible solution to do it? So you can't just say AI everything. You're going to say, well, I'm going to have AI, but one part of this is going to be very, very normal. So for example, you can have maybe like a gardening app for homeowners that is trying to track how much money they spend every single year on gardening products so they can claim it on tax. Then great, awesome. Then you can use AI to aggregate the spend, give you an insight and prediction. But that app is not an AI app. So it's got to be feasible, not too crazy, but also understand the tech landscape as well. So yeah, so all of this, imagine doing all of that in a span of 45 minutes in an interview process, right? And this is why it's very hard for you to just read a book and do a course and smash the interviews. You have to walk the path, you have to build something to really know, because by the process of you building something, you have to know who your audience is. You have to know what the product problem is, and you want to build something yourself. And I want to share with you a framework as well before I go on. If you are going for an interview process, check out this framework. You can follow through. I don't think I have enough time to run through this. We can run through this next week if you still want to come. But basically, this is a framework of how you can do it, like go through each of these criteria and all that stuff. But at a high level, this is the 7-step process. It's based very much on Lewis Lin's process, but I just simplified it to 7-step.